Antarctica stands as the southernmost continent, a vast and largely ice-covered landmass distinguished by its extreme isolation and environmental conditions. Discussions of its position relative to other continents reveal that the southern tip of South America, specifically Cape Horn in Chile, lies closest to Antarctica. The distance across the Drake Passage to the nearest Antarctic land, such as points on the Antarctic Peninsula or the South Shetland Islands, measures approximately 500 to 650 miles. This proximity positions Antarctica as the nearest continental neighbor to South America, far closer than to Australia or other land masses. Such geographical facts underscore the continent's role in shaping routes of exploration and modern access, while highlighting the formidable barriers posed by oceanic separation and climatic extremes. Explorations of hypothetical flight paths from Cape Horn southward demonstrate the continent's placement on global Great Circle routes. A direct trajectory over Antarctica toward the opposite hemisphere would eventually reach Australia as the next major landmass, with distances ranging from roughly 6,000 to 7,500 miles depending on the specific Australian coastal target. Paths explicitly crossing the South Pole add nuance to these calculations, yielding similar ranges, approximately 6,200 to 6,500 miles to Perth or comparable figures to other points, though such precise polar alignments remain theoretical constructs rather than practiced corridors. These distances reflect Earth's curvature and the continent's central position in southern latitudes, where any southward departure from South America inevitably traverses Antarctic terrain before emerging on the far side. The absence of routine human transit across Antarctica stems from practical and regulatory constraints that govern aviation and visitation alike. Commercial flights between southern South America and Australia typically skirt the continent's edges rather than penetrate its interior, influenced by safety considerations and operational limitations. No evidence exists of flights originating near Cape Horn that cross directly over the South Pole en route to Australia, nor do standard commercial services undertake full transantarctic journeys. These patterns illustrate how geographical proximity coexists with profound inaccessibility, setting the stage for an examination of the continent's research infrastructure, human presence, and the international framework that shapes its use. Geographical distances and transantarctic pathways. The Drake Passage represents the narrowest oceanic divide between South America and Antarctica, spanning roughly 500 miles at its shortest. This measurement applies to the stretch from Cape Horn to proximal Antarctic features, including islands and peninsular extensions. Such proximity facilitates certain forms of access, particularly for maritime expeditions departing from southern Chilean or Argentine ports, yet the passage remains notorious for turbulent seas and unpredictable weather that complicate navigation. The short distance belies the challenges of crossing, where currents and storms create conditions far more demanding than mere mileage suggests. Hypothetical aerial routes extending beyond the Drake Passage into the Antarctic interior reveal longer trajectories toward distant continents. From Cape Horn, a great circle path over the continent, and continuing northward on the opposing side aligns with western or southern Australian coasts after traversing thousands of miles of ice and ocean. Estimates place these full crossings in the 6,000 to 7,500 mile range, with variations depending on longitude and endpoint. No commercial aviation exploits this direct alignment, as prevailing routes favor northern detours or coastal approximations to mitigate risks associated with the interior's remoteness. The concept of a South Pole-inclusive flight path introduces additional specificity to distance considerations. Such a trajectory from Cape Horn would arc across the Antarctic plateau, pass precisely over the geographic pole, and proceed toward Australia, maintaining comparable overall lengths to non-polar Great Circle equivalents. Despite the theoretical efficiency of polar routing on a spherical Earth, no documented instances exist of this precise journey being undertaken from southern South America to Australia. Aviation practices prioritize operational safety over minimal distance in this context. Aviation constraints and operational realities. Extended-range twin-engine operational performance standards, commonly referred to as ETOPS regulations, impose strict limits on how far twin-engine aircraft may operate from suitable diversion airports. These rules, established and refined by international aviation authorities, require certification of aircraft reliability, operator procedures, and maintenance practices to permit extended diversion times, often up to 180 or 330 minutes. In regions lacking alternate landing sites, such as the Antarctic interior, compliance becomes exceedingly difficult, rendering deep continental crossings impractical for most commercial operations. The application of these standards explains the rarity of flights penetrating far into Antarctica en route between continents. Routes connecting southern South America to Australia occasionally pass near Antarctic coastal zones for meteorological advantages, yet they avoid the central plateau and polar regions. Special flights, including some repositioning or sightseeing operations, have ventured closer to Antarctic ice, but none replicate the full Cape Horn to Australia polar pathway. This pattern reflects a broader prioritization of safety and regulatory adherence over geographical directness. No records indicate the completion of a flight originating near Cape Horn, crossing the South Pole, and terminating in Australia. Such an absence aligns with the logistical and regulatory environment, where the lack of emergency infrastructure, extreme temperatures, and absence of economic incentives preclude routine adoption. Aviation thus remains confined to peripheral engagements with the continent, preserving its interior as a domain of limited human transit. Human presence and research infrastructure. Antarctica hosts no cities or permanent civilian settlements in the conventional understanding. All human activity occurs within research stations or temporary field camps, with populations fluctuating seasonally between a few thousand in summer and around 1,000 in winter across the entire continent. The absence of urban development stems from the continent's designation for scientific purposes, precluding private habitation or commercial exploitation beyond regulated tourism and research support. Among research facilities, McMurdo Station, operated by the United States, stands as the largest and most populous site. During the austral summer, it accommodates up to 1,200 individuals, including scientists and logistical personnel, while winter populations decline to approximately 150 to 250. This scale surpasses other stations, which typically house dozens to a few hundred occupants seasonally. Clusters on King George Island and the Antarctic Peninsula feature multiple national bases in proximity, yet none approach McMurdo's capacity or infrastructural complexity. Other notable stations include Amundsen-Scott at the South Pole, focusing on polar-specific sciences, Scott Base nearby on Ross Island, Rothera on the peninsula, Concordia in the interior, and Vostok, known for deep ice coring. These facilities support diverse inquiries into climate, biology, and geophysics, yet they remain isolated outposts rather than populated centers. The continent's human geography is thus defined by temporary, purpose-driven communities rather than enduring societal structures. Access restrictions and the Antarctic Treaty framework. The Antarctic Treaty, signed on December 1, 1959, by 12 nations active in Antarctic science during the International Geophysical Year, entered into force in 1961. It establishes the continent south of 60 degrees south latitude as a zone dedicated to peaceful purposes and scientific investigation. Core provisions prohibit military activities beyond logistical support, ban nuclear explosions and waste disposal, and freeze existing territorial claims while preventing new ones. Freedom of scientific research and international cooperation form central obligations, enforced through mutual inspections. Subsequent agreements, including the 1991 Protocol on Environmental Protection, reinforce these principles by designating Antarctica a natural reserve and imposing stringent environmental safeguards. Mineral resource activities are prohibited except for scientific research, and visitation requires permits, impact assessments, and adherence to guidelines minimizing disturbance to ecosystems and landscapes. These measures ensure the continent's preservation as a shared scientific domain. No outright prohibition prevents entry to Antarctica, yet practical and regulatory barriers severely limit access. Tourism, primarily ship-based to the peninsula, occurs under operator self-regulation and national oversight, with annual visitor numbers exceeding 100,000 in recent seasons. Independent or permanent settlement remains infeasible due to the absence of property rights, infrastructure, and legal frameworks for civilian residency. The treaty system thus balances openness for science with protections that maintain the continent's exceptional status. Scientific exploration and the South Pole. The geographic South Pole has been reached by humans since the early 20th century, with documented visits continuing to the present. Amundsen-Scott South Pole Station, situated at the pole, supports ongoing research and hosts seasonal populations of around 150 in summer and 40 to 50 in winter. A marker denoting the precise geographic point is repositioned annually to account for ice movement, accompanied by a ceremonial site featuring national flags for photographic and symbolic purposes. Abundant visual documentation confirms human presence at the South Pole. Photographs and videos capture the marker, station facilities, and personnel activities, shared through official channels and public archives. These records provide unequivocal evidence of repeated visits and sustained occupation at the pole itself. Live webcams installed at Amundsen-Scott station offer real-time views of the surrounding area, transmitting images at regular intervals. Such broadcasts, accessible online, depict station structures and environmental conditions, though winter darkness and weather may obscure details. These resources enable remote observation of polar activity, extending awareness beyond physical visitation. Conclusion: Antarctica as a global scientific preserve. Antarctica emerges as a continent defined by profound geographical isolation, stringent international governance, and dedicated scientific endeavor. Its proximity to South America contrasts sharply with the vast distances to other landmasses, while hypothetical transcontinental pathways highlight theoretical connections unexploited in practice. Aviation constraints, rooted in safety regulations, preserve the interior's inaccessibility, reinforcing the continent's role as a domain of limited human incursion. Research stations constitute the sole loci of sustained presence, with McMurdo exemplifying the largest concentration of personnel amid a network of specialized facilities. The Antarctic Treaty and its extensions establish a framework that prohibits militarization, exploitation, and unrestricted settlement, prioritizing environmental integrity and cooperative science. This system ensures that access remains regulated and purposeful, whether for research or managed tourism. The South Pole, emblematic of the continent's extremes, bears witness to enduring human achievement through documented visits and ongoing station operations. Live observations via webcams further democratize awareness of this remote point. Collectively, these elements portray Antarctica as a unique global commons, where geographical realities intersect with deliberate human restraint to sustain its distinctive character.